Welcome to the Rattlebox Games podcast, a bi-weekly romp through the fertile fields of the world of tabletop games with your friends at Rattlebox Games. I'm Rob, and I'm here today with
Brendan. And on today's show, we're going to talk about what we've been playing, cold-themed games, and we're going to talk about some recommendations that are not games.
If that gave you the idea that you want to get in touch with us, go with that. You can contact us. We're at Rattlebox Games on Twitter, and you can reach us by email at podcast@rattleboxgames.com.
Woohoo!
Well, Brendan, as far as I can tell, it is time for me to ask you, what have you been playing this week?
Well, I would love to tell you, Rob, but we need to figure out how long I have.
Oh, let's see. I think we're sharing that time, though, right?
Oh, yes. So I think what I'll do is, however much time you say we have, I'll use almost all of it, and then the last second I'll be like, and what are you playing, Rob?
Let's roll a D8.
Ooh, a D8. That sounds good.
Okay.
Lots to talk about.
Well, we could still...
Yeah.
Oh.
And we rolled a 1. Oh my gosh, 1 minute.
Yeah, I guess when you choose a higher die, that doesn't mean you'll get a higher result.
True enough.
Before we start,
Right.
do you need to compose your thoughts?
Okay. Got it. I'm ready.
Okay.
Do you want me to go first, or you want to go first?
You can go first. That's fine.
Okay. And go. The game I'd like to talk about is called Star Wars Empire vs. Rebellion. This is a 2-player card game that was released in 2014, and as far as I know, no one has ever talked about it since. It's from Fantasy Flight. One of the co-designers, there's 3 designers on it, is a woman, Nikki Valens, who has been part of the Mansions of Madness 2.0, which is very well received. It's a 2-player duel game themed around Star Wars, and you're playing cards to kind of fight over points, and... I won because my opponent forgot.
You stop talking. So, I've been playing Rainier Kinezia's Fantasy Flight game, Lord of the Rings Confrontation. It's a game I've enjoyed for many years. I have both the original copy and then I have the deluxe expanded copy. It's been out of print for a while, but then they brought it back. I like it. A lot of people compare it to Stratego, but the similarities are in sort of the pieces and the shape of the board, not so much in the gameplay. It's a good game.
All right. That was a minute.
I think I wasted a second, maybe a second and a half there.
So I'm going to use that second to say, because my opponent forgot how he screwed me over, and then I won.
I think it was too long. I have to edit that out. All right. As always, on the Rattlebox Games podcast, when we talk about a game we've been playing, we give it a rating on not 1 to 10, not 1 to 20, D1 to D20. And my question to you, Brendan, is, what do you give? What was the
D1 to D20? What are you talking about? We usually just say 1 to 20.
No.
Like what you would
It's
roll
D1.
on a D20.
No, it's a D1. It's a D20. Or D... Anyway, you're right. Okay. but it's not just a 18.
Right.
It's an 18 on a D20.
All right. Oh, yes, on a D20.
Yes.
Yeah, my game, Star Wars Empire versus Rebellion, I'm going to say a 12 or 13. I think it probably gets better if you play it a few times because both people become familiar with all of the things it can do. But ultimately, I think it would wear out its welcome fairly quickly if you played it more than a few times.
Fair enough. I really like Confrontation. We'll have to talk about it in depth at some point in the future. Maybe we'll do a Rainier Kinesia day, and I'll talk about that game in detail. I think... I was giving it a score 16.
Oh,
yeah.
Nice.
Yeah. I mean, that's for rating it on what it is.
Well,
a 2-player game that takes, we consider one game to be, once again, playing twice.
It's under an hour to play for those 2 games?
Yes.
Okay.
You could play both games in 30 minutes.
Oh, nice.
So yeah, that's what I said, and I'm sticking to it.
Sounds good.
All right. Boy, we sure got that out of the way.
Well, that's part of the delight and excitement of the Amerithrash method of deciding how long you're going to talk about games you've played.
Let me tell you, folks, that we've got a bunch of other notes for that segment that just did not get gotten to.
That's right.
Okay. At that point, we have discussed, we have rated. That means we're free to move right on to our very topical topic, which is games with cold themes. We're here in Chicago at Rattlebox Towers, and it's cold out, and it's getting colder.
Indeed. And, working downtown, January is the month of the vicious wind.
Mm.
The wind comes howling down between the buildings. The skin on your face crackles a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
It reminds me, I grew up in Minnesota. It reminds me of my childhood in the winter. So I thought maybe we could start with just a very brief little segment from my favorite story about the cold, the heartbreaking To Build a Fire from Jack London.
Okay.
So he says, I will say I have experienced this thing described in this paragraph. As he turned to go, he forced some water from his mouth as an experiment. There was a sudden noise that surprised him. He tried it again and again. In the air, before they could fall to the snow, the drops of water became ice that broke with a noise. He knew that at 50 below zero, water from the mouth made a noise when it hit the snow, but this had done that in the air. Undoubtedly, it was colder than 50 below, but exactly how much colder he did not know. But the temperature did not matter. I distinctly recall as a child climbing to the top of the monkey bars during recess, spitting, and hearing my spit crack when it hit the ground because it had frozen on the way down. And my children complain about the cold here.
So in the mid-1990s, there was a brutal cold snap.
Sure.
In Chicago. So we're headed over the weekend on Sunday in Chicago.
Mm-hmm.
The high is supposed to be something around -2. And the low is supposed to be somewhere around -16. I think this was around -40.
Mm-hmm.
And it was pointed out on the news that when you go outside, pay attention to the sounds because it was so cold that the air's properties of conducting sound were significantly different. So everything sounded sort of
tinny.
Yeah, higher pitch, tinny. That's great. I remember I was working at a coffee shop. I was walking to work and I was listening. I was thinking, oh, that's the sound of freezing to death.
Yeah.
Crinkle, crinkle, crinkle.
Yeah, there's something particular about the way the snow sounds when it gets super cold. When you step on cold and snow in a certain kind of weather that reminds me of.
Do we want to transition?
Yeah, I think so.
Why not? There's no one here to stop us.
That's right. And, it's the right time. It's cold outside, but it's warm in here. So let's talk about some games.
There you go.
That's right.
My daughter and I last winter, final aside on cold. There's the horrible song, Baby It's Cold Outside.
Well, that song shifted from being cute to being horrible in my mind all at once, like for a long time. And to be truthful, like two consenting adults who have a good relationship, that song has a sort of charm to it.
But have you listened to the words?
Yeah.
They aren't having a consenting relationship.
Well, you could see two people who had been dating for a while having that conversation. But yeah, like, hey, what's in this drink? That's a pretty, yeah.
Let's not go too far down that dark road. We did a re-theme of that as Baby There's Zombies Outside. So we just changed his lyrics.
Sure.
So she keeps saying everything the way she would, but he has her trying to go out into a zombie outbreak.
Right. And
his just begging her.
And she's still worried about what her aunt and uncle will think if she doesn't come home. I guess they'll think she's dead. Well, zombies in the cold is something that we've seen in a number of places in the media. That there's a well-known Swedish film, Norwegian film. There's a well-known
Lutefisk?
Yes.
It's called Lutefisk.
There's a well-known Swedish film called Dead Snow. That's about Nazi zombies.
Yes.
That's particularly good because zombies running through the snow is funnier than zombies out in the city or whatever. That also leads us into games.
And this conversation could or could not be edited out of the final podcast.
Well, there's a game where the zombie outbreak is outside. So the song you were singing, it sounds like you were singing about the very popular game from last year, Dead of Winter, which is about a zombie apocalypse and living in Alaska.
I've never heard of that before. 1 second. Let me put on my plaid hat. Anyway, that is a game that you and I have played several times, I think including right when it came out.
Yeah. I believe that was one of the games where I ended up getting the trader card, and I felt terrible about betraying you all. I did it, but I felt really bad.
I think you've always been the traitor, and I've never noticed any sign that you feel
figure
bad.
it out. You figure out I'm the traitor so fast.
I think from now on we play that I'm just kicking you out.
Yeah,
I don't
I'm gone.
care if it kills everyone.
Well, okay, so having played that, how do you think the winter theme plays in the game? Like, do you think that it feels wintry? I mean, if it were
It doesn't to me.
right, if it were summer in the Midwest, would it play any different?
No, it doesn't. And that's, I guess, the only way that it maybe does is that you're scavenging food,
Mm-hmm.
but you're always scavenging food.
Right, but it's harder in the summer. It would be harder to. It's easier to scavenge food from places where it could grow. Right, by having it be winter, you can't find an apple tree.
Yes, although what I know about Alaska is all of the towns are on the coast, and for tens of thousands of years, humans have been finding food sources from the ocean.
Yeah, but I mean, a regular group of sort of modern Americans. But you're right, there would be fisher people living.
There'd be boats.
Yeah.
And the nice thing is about a boat, for me, one of my ideal zombie survival scenarios is get a sailboat. It's easy to clear it of all zombies.
Mm-hmm.
And then, you don't have to be far out in the water to be safe from zombies.
Right.
So anyway, the theme there, you know what it does? It leaves me a little cold.
Oh, wow. Well, they do. It does occur to me they also have, that terrible die that you roll when you move from building to building that sort of represents the risk you take in going out. Does have a frostbite wound that you can get.
That's true.
That is a sort of slow burning wound.
It's good you said that because I could hear people's heads exploding.
Right. Or freezing, probably.
Well, you can hear them explode after you spit them out before they hit the ground. It's so cold.
But yeah, I think the winter theme doesn't. I never really worry about. Oh, it's cold. I mean, it's on the art and stuff, but you don't. It doesn't feel like you have to pay attention to the cold in the playing of the game.
As a game designer, which is one of the things we are, game designers. I've been kicking around like, what would a game where cold was really brought into the mechanics? So gathering fuel.
Sure.
Like if they had to gather fuel, which you would.
Right. Well, that's the famous Uwe Rosenberg game Agricola.
Mm-hmm.
They have an expansion called Farmers of the Moor, which I haven't played, but it adds to the difficulty of the game because you have to gather fuel now. Mm-hmm. So when you do the harvest, you also have to have a certain amount of fuel to heat your hovel, which, people who don't like that game will refer to it as Misery Farm. And I think adding in the rule that you now also have to heat your house, I can see why people wouldn't like it. I personally want to get that expansion because
can you burn your children as a stopgap?
No, they're workers. You don't burn the children.
Well, but you can have more children.
I guess
you can't give birth to more firewood.
This is a dark path you're taking.
Perhaps. Outside of that, the other thing is it's a thematic game. It needed a setting.
Right.
That's as good as anything.
Right.
And you're right, they do have the frostbite damage. And it's nice with the art.
Mm-hmm.
It thumbing its nose slightly at the sort of conventional wisdom that zombies don't do well in the cold.
Right.
These are homothermic zombies.
Right. Which, does go against the widely accepted Max Brooks zombie survival guide, which says that zombies will freeze and they reanimate during the thaw.
Yeah. And and also he said that the people, spoiler alert, he said that people in space could see the deforestation happening when people went north. They were cutting down trees to keep warm over the winter.
For sure. So other games that have the cold theme.
There are none. That's it.
That's it? Oh,
all right. Well, and now thanks for listening. No.
There are a few more. So I mentioned Elder Sign a number of times. One of the more recent expansions is Omens of Ice, which is winter themed. Fantasy Flight has a number of times delved into the parts of the Lovecraft story where people travel to the Arctic and find, something horrible buried under the ice. And so Omens of Ice is one of the good expansions for Elder Sign where they give you a new set of locations and a new set of Mythos cards and let you travel north. I don't know that there's much more to say about that.
And we talked a lot about Elder Sign recently.
We have.
In our expansions episode. Go back and listen.
Mm-hmm. I think
2 episodes ago? 2 episodes ago.
Right.
All right. What about Arctic Scavengers?
Ooh, that's a good one.
Yeah. Robert Gabhart?
Yeah, and he really hasn't done anything else. If you go look him up, that is the one game he designed. Arctic Scavengers has gotten a bit of notoriety. It's a deck building game that takes place in a sort of Snowpiercer future where the world has frozen over and everybody's living in tribes. And as a player, you are the leader of a tribe and you're trying to survive. So it's a deck building game with the standard you draw cards and you can buy from a market.
Mm-hmm.
The thing that it does that's a little different is there's a pile of like really good cards, and each round there's a fight for one of those. And so when you're using your cards, you can use them to do a variety of different things to look for resources or recruit new tribe members. But any cards that you don't use for those things, they go into the skirmish. And at the end of the round, when everyone's had their turn, then you all reveal your skirmish cards, and whoever sent the most strength to the skirmish gets this really good card, which is it's usually either like a weapon, a character who's really strong, or it'll be like 4 or 5 tribe members.
Yeah.
In like Dominion or other deck building games, the thing that determines whether you win is the number of people in your tribe. And most of the time, if you get like 4 tribe members, they don't do much else.
Yeah.
So they can bog down your game.
I remember feeling about that game that it fits into a category that a lot of games do. To get a grasp of that game, I would have needed to play it a couple more times.
Yeah, and I think I did my standard, bring it over one time and play it, and then don't bring it over again, which, I could fix that by bringing it again.
It's sort of a medium length game too, isn't it?
Yeah, I think on our first play it goes slower, but yeah, I mean it's got a set amount of time, in that there are 14 of those cards in the skirmish deck, and so when those run out, that's when the game is over. But in terms of theme, that one I like that one better. Like when you're looking for resources, there's a junk pile, and there's some good stuff in there, but there's also a lot of crap.
Yeah.
There are literally cards that just say junk.
Yeah.
And there's nothing on them. When you go scavenging for resources in that pile, you spend a number of points to draw a certain number of cards off the top of that deck, and you might get 3 or 4 junk cards and nothing good. And then those cards go on the bottom of the deck, so now you've now made it easier for someone else to find stuff.
Yeah. If I remember, and this is a really unfair criticism.
Sure.
Each rank of character.
Mm-hmm.
So they're like engineers and nurses, right?
Yeah, and some hunters and some brawlers.
Yeah. But don't they isn't it the same card art?
In a given, yeah. So like if you get a brawler, all the brawlers have the same art.
Now, speaking once again as a game designer,
yeah,
I know that it would be fabulously expensive to go through and have every brawler, all of those be different.
Right.
But I feel like it takes a little bit away from theme how are we all sending the same brawler?
Right. Yeah, that's a good point.
Is this a clone?
Do you know, like, does Dominion use the same art for all of the cards of a particular?
It does, but it's a little more excusable there because they're architectural. It doesn't feel.
Okay. Sure.
I guess you could imagine a city in which all of the sellers have the same architecture.
Yeah, I suspect the design advantage to using the same piece of art is that when you lay it down on the table, I recognize it because it's the same as mine.
Completely. I don't begin to blame them, but on several levels.
It's a good point.
But yeah, it's
when you're looking at your hand, if you had a variety of different images, it would make it more fun.
Agreed. I agree with my point. And then Panic Station.
So Panic Station is a game that is sort of legendarily bad. Or at least the first edition was. The designer David Auslus released.
Great name.
Yeah, it's awesome, and he's done some other really good stuff. I can't recall off the top of my head, but if you go look at him in Board Game Geek, he's got other titles more recent that you've heard of.
Mm-hmm.
He released a second edition of the rules that's supposed to be much better. The game is still a little bit confusing, but it's a great theme. Basically, it's attempting to be The Thing, the board game.
Nice.
So it's you lead a team of people going into a base where something bad has happened, and there's these little parasites running around. And the clever thing is anytime you encounter another person in the game, you either have to fight them or do a handshake thing. And when you do the handshake, if they're infected, they pass you an infected card, and now you're infected.
Oh, man.
Which so then you're on the other team now. And so the goal is to either wipe out all of the parasites, which you do with like flamethrowers and stuff, or if you're on the parasite team, to infect everybody. But the mechanics of that are really awkward. and so it's legendarily difficult to play because to get your head around how it's supposed to work is really tough. And so then people, and I will say I'm in this boat. I got the game in a trade. I've read the rules a few times, and I've not tried to play it yet. So someday I would like to, because the theme to me is so amazing, like that. Yeah. But yeah, I haven't gotten it yet.
Well, we could do that sometime. Well, now we move on to games that we, in fact, have not played.
Right. Which I guess Panic Station is a game we haven't played, but I've read the rules and I have a copy, so it's different than all these other ones.
It's played adjacent.
Yeah.
We've got Snowtails, a dog sledding game by Gordon and Fraser Lamont.
Right. That one's pretty widely regarded. Dog sledding game. I don't know. There's a lot more to say about it, but
do the dogs talk?
I don't think so. I don't
think they actually talk in that movie either with Cuba Gooding Jr. I think that's one of those, like, what's the Australian movie? Kangaroo Jack? What is that?
Kangaroo Jack?
Oh, no.
Also has a dog sledding thing? I don't know.
Oh,
do the kangaroos talk in
like
Kangaroo Jack?
A second where he's like concussed and
the kangaroo
talks.
Oh.
And they built, all the trailers were built around that.
So people thought they were going to see a movie about talking kangaroos, and in fact they weren't. Oh, that's a good twisteroo.
Anyway.
Yeah, it seems to me there's other. Iron Will is another snow dog racing movie.
Yeah.
My uncle actually was in the 90-mile John Bear Grease race from Grand Marais to Duluth one year. I remember driving out at 2 a.m. to like cheer him on as he came by, mushing his dogs.
Nice.
Yeah, that's cold. But dog sledding is a cool theme.
Yeah.
Then we have a couple mountain climbing games. Adam Kaluza famously designed K2, which is a particularly brutal mountain climbing game where it's apparently easy to freeze to death. Like K2 itself. Kaluza also more recently designed Everest, and I don't know a lot about that, but I know that he is actually a climber and an explorer. I think his most well-regarded game is The Cave, which is about spelunking. And it has been a game that I've thought, if I ever run into that at a store, I'm totally going to buy it. But I never see it available online for anything except full retail. And if I'm going to pay full retail, I want to support a store.
Sure. I'll buy that. Well, then Antarctica by Charles Chevalier. I'm going to choose that pronunciation.
Nice.
And that's basically an area control game.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I don't know much more about that one than what you just said, but it seems like Antarctica is a theme that's come around lately.
It's nice that it's international. No one owns it.
That's right. Well, it's that the reason for that is that that's where we found the thing, and as with the moon, we don't want to have an incident, so we share it.
There you go.
So, I took a trip to Ireland last summer, and while I was there, I got to go to the South Pole Inn, which is a bar founded by a guy who was on the Endurance expedition. And he also was on the ill-fated Captain Scott journey, and he was one of the last men to make it out.
I'd rather go with Shackleton than Scott.
Right.
He did a better job of getting his guys out.
Right. Right, and this guy was on both journeys, and then he went back to Ireland and founded a pub and put up all the pictures of his stuff in his trip to Antarctica. The Shackleton, the Endurance journey is actually the scenario for the next Time Stories expansion that's coming out. I don't know what they'll do. We'll probably discover that aliens were involved, but
maybe that's why everyone survived.
Right? Could be.
Because aliens.
Yeah.
Not because eating, I don't know, did they eat the dogs?
They did.
I believe. Yeah, they got down to
eventually.
But they also built them houses.
And they didn't lose any men. I mean, that's
incredible.
Yeah.
Anyway, read the book Endurance. It takes about a half an hour to read. It's sort of the size of your college textbooks as far as the X and Y axes. The height and width are similar to your college textbooks, which accommodates the pictures that they include nicely.
Yeah. But then there's also a recent game called Snowblind, which is built around this idea of the race to get to the South Pole. And it, like K2, it involves building supply chains and sort of managing the survival of your people as they go into the deep waste. Simon McGregor, the guy who designed it, is also well known for Ancient Terrible Things, which is a pretty well-regarded game that came out on Kickstarter a while ago.
Well, and then A Few Acres of Snow.
Oh, I like Martin Wallace a lot.
War of 1812.
You know this game is famously broken, right?
Yeah.
Shortly after the game came out, I actually just read up on this because somebody was talking on a forum on Board Game Geek. They said, if a game has a clear winning strategy, is that game broken? I brought up the example of A Few Acres of Snow, where somebody figured out that I haven't played the game, so I can't say what you do, but there's some strategy that has come to be called the Halifax Hammer. And apparently, if you do that and your opponent didn't know you were going to, it's pretty much impossible to lose the game. And so people widely regarded the game as broken. Apparently, Martin Wallace released alternate rules, and it didn't fix the problem.
Oh, no.
And so it's interesting to sort of read the debates about whether that game's broken or not. But, it's built all around the War of 1812, which was this sort of disaster for the United States, right? We made a lot of strategic blunders of sort of shocking, if you read about it, like really just stupid choices about how to deploy most Americans don't remember that we lost the war to Canada, but we did.
Will we ever learn about invading giant cold countries as a race? It does not seem like that's a lesson that sinks in.
Yeah. Never get involved in a land war in Asia.
Yes.
That's right. So
why don't you talk about Ice Cool?
Okay. So the last game I had to mention was a game that got a lot of buzz out of Essen this year, called Ice Cool. And it's a dexterity game about penguins at a school who are truant. So you're trying to run around the school and not get caught. And the way you play it is the game has these Weeble pieces, the little sort of fat at the bottom, thin at the top.
Can I ask you a question?
Sure.
Do they wobble?
I think, they both Weeble and wobble.
Now, can I ask a follow-up question?
Okay.
Do they fall down?
Well, and they get back up again? Yeah.
Well, I believe that Weebles wobble, but they don't fall down.
Oh. Well, I guess it's if you tip over, but then you tip back up, have you fallen down?
No.
Oh, okay. Then no. They
No.
don't. They end up sitting upright. The game comes in a box with these sort of boxes nested inside each other and strategically placed holes. So the way you play the game is you get the boxes out and clip them together, and it makes a kind of school. And then you flick the Weebles around in the school. And I've heard tell that you're allowed to flick them in such a way that they fly up in the air, so you can go over walls if you want. But the whole point is to move the Weebles around the space without getting caught by the teacher.
My fingernails hurt just hearing you describe that.
So I found a copy at a local game store in their library that you could, and we sort of set it up and flicked the pieces around for a couple of minutes. And I was like, I don't really feel like playing a dexterity game, so we didn't actually play the game, but got to finger the fiddly bits.
And there's the explicit tag. I'm going to dip back into games we've actually played.
Okay.
I think we would be remiss if we didn't talk about Milton Bradley's Don't Break the Ice. 2-player game. It's played on a grid, 8x8. And it's composed of mainly 1-unit white cubes. You stack them into a frame.
Okay.
They're held there by tension, one against the other. And then you set the frame up so that they're a good 6 inches above the table.
Okay.
In the center, instead of a 1x1 unit square, there is a 2x2 square. And you place a little plastic polar bear on top. And each player is given a mallet that they use to tap, 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 tap. And you have to take out a square each turn.
Oh, and the goal is to...
The goal is to not be the person who causes the goal is to not be the player who causes the bear to fall through, either by too manfully tapping the ice or by causing all the ice to break and fall.
Right.
Now, the problem with the theme on that is, why do polar bears care about being under Arctic ice?
That's true. They kind of like, maybe the polar bear's carrying something. He's got a book. And he doesn't want to get the book ruined.
I believe he is wearing a scarf.
Oh, okay. So
he's also red.
Maybe it's cashmere, and if you get it wet, it's going to mess it up.
Oh, yeah. Well, probably dry cleaner's closed.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Well, so is there a name for games where... Is there a name for the mechanism in a game where your goal is to not be the one who screws things up?
Press your luck?
I guess, but I think of Press Your Luck games as ones where your choice is, do I continue or do I stop and take what I have, right? So in Dead Man's Draw, for instance, do you take another card and cause another effect, or do you stop or Zombie Dice or something, Whereas this one, you have to, each turn, you have to take a turn. Or
Yeah.
Jenga is the same way, right?
Totally. Yes. Well, I guess what exactly that's called doesn't spring to mind. So we're at Rattlebox Games on Twitter.
I would love to hear. Yeah.
We're podcasts at rattleboxgames.com on email.
And also, are there other games that aren't dexterity games that still have a don't be the one who screws things up? I mean, in some ways, if we think about that game Quarto, in which your goal is to get 4 in a row of a certain type, but part of the game is that you hand your opponent the piece they have to play.
Yeah.
So you don't want to be the one who screws up, but your opponent could screw up by not noticing the victory you've handed them.
Yeah, it's difficult in that case, you're right, because each move involves both players.
Right.
Yeah, well, I have to think about that.
Yeah.
Maybe we'll talk about that in a game mechanic episode. Maybe we could do a press your luck episode.
Yeah.
The other game, I kind of feel like I'll just mention it. Do you think that the Game of Thrones board game fits? I mean, the thing is, winter is coming.
Yeah. Well,
it's not there.
Thematically, Game of Thrones does a better job of capturing the real feel of winter than almost anything I've encountered.
The thing about that game is, whereas there's a huge part of the mechanics where it's to do with things going on in the north, all of the action could conceivably be happening in the warm south of the game. I agree, and that's what brought it to mind is the fact that they do convey feelings of cold. Yeah. Hard winters and whatnot.
Yeah. Oh man, the scenes. Yeah, especially in the first and second book. I can't remember when the things happened, but yeah, the scenes when Jon Snow and the Rangers have gone north of the Wall and they're trying to find out what's going on. That some of the cold that's described there reminds me of going winter camping when I was a kid and just bone chilling cold that you have to deal with.
So we did a really short what we've been playing section.
Yep.
And I think we're essentially done with the discussion, the main topic. Can we take a diversion?
Sure. It's our podcast, man.
There you go. I watched The Revenant recently. You're talking about Game of Thrones. We're talking about the War of 1812. I just have this feeling that for most of human history, people who lived sort of outside of the tropics, there were huge parts of the year where I think you were probably cold on a level that we would find almost unbearable.
Sure.
They didn't have proper shoes. They didn't have gloves. How
Right.
many fingers did these people have? How did people live in Europe? I mean, I guess Europe isn't as bad. The Native American tribes that lived in this region and who didn't leave.
Right.
All the credit in the world to these incredible people who figured out how to survive.
Yeah, I think about that when I think about my favorite Christmas carol, the medieval song "Good King Wenceslas," right, which starts with the fat and boastful king looking out his window, and he sees this poor schlup gathering winter fuel, right? Literally had to go out on a frosty night to get wood so that his family wouldn't freeze to death. And the king's like, "We're going to bring him meat and wood." And there's this weird moment, right, where the page, if you don't know the song, the page says, "It's so cold, king, I can't stand it." He's like, "Just walk in my steps." And then the ground is warm where the king has been stepping. It's such a weird song, right? Because on one hand, it sort of reinforces royalty, and it has all this wealthy people who want to help the poor are blessed themselves. But also, in my head, I was like, the poor page, his shoes are so thin he can feel the warmth in the ground. How hot does the ground have to be that you can feel it through your shoes? Or I'm like, no, there's a certain point at which your body tricks you. The page's feet are frostbitten. He thinks the ground is warm because he's losing his feet.
He's dying.
Yeah.
My hat's off to the peoples of the terribly cold parts of the world.
Right. Thanks for keeping the species alive during the Ice Age.
Yeah, and when the zombie apocalypse comes, I hope you'll share your knowledge with us.
For sure.
Yurts, teepees, igloos. Those are 3 things we should all start thinking about, I guess.
Yeah.
Well, that brings us to the point in the show, Brendan, where we talk about recommendations.
Oh, sounds good. Hopefully we'll get a better roll this time. 1 minute, that went really fast.
Yes, although I enjoyed cutting you off.
Yeah,
thoroughly. So
I will say I appreciated that, but I didn't. but I get it.
Thank you for almost not lying to me.
Gotta keep me honest.
All right, let's see what we get. D4?
Yep. 1 minute.
That's a 1. All right, here, 1 second. I need to think.
Okay. I have 3 things, so I'm going to say 10 seconds for each. That's going to be super awesome.
I'm going to fit 2 endorsements into 30 seconds. My first endorsement is for scarves. I like wearing a scarf.
For sure.
It's cold. If you can hear, that's a snowplow going by in the street. I like to wear a scarf, wear it inside or wear it outside. A cashmere scarf's a good thing. The other thing that I want to talk about is Tribe Called Quest's new album. We Got It From Here. It's great. Give it a listen. It's as good as Low End Theory. Go, Brendan.
All right, I have 3 things I want to endorse. 1, this time of year, I always like to bust out my Mad Bomber cap. This is a hat that makes you look hilarious. It's got ear flaps and rabbit fur. It's fantastic. Look up Mad Bomber caps. If you have poor circulation in your hands like I do, I bought big hunting mittens at a hunting store, and then I have gloves that I actually wear inside the mittens, so I do with gloves in mittens.
Nice.
And finally, go read the story Dark Snow by Brendan Dubois. It's awesome. Look at that. Next episode, we're going to be talking about the upcoming year from the position of Rattlebox Games. As most of you know, we are half of the founding group that designs and produces games under the label Rattlebox Games. We thought we'd take a few minutes to talk about the projects we're working on, our goals for the year, the projects we've been developing, and how we're going to proceed.
Yeah, just all things Rattlebox. So we look forward to talking to you about that, and we'll, of course, talk about what we've been playing, there should be a bunch of stuff there.
Yeah.
And we'll talk about...
Hopefully you can roll better.
Well, I love operating under a constraint, so a 1 is a beautiful thing to me. But yeah, I wouldn't mind having some more time next time, because I like to talk to you folks.
We do. I think we also should ask the listeners, we'd be interested to know what you're looking for from this podcast. Do you have things you'd like to see us do differently, topics you wish we would cover, questions you want us to answer?
I can guarantee that at this point, we will be very responsive.
Oh, for sure.
We have a small, loyal listener base, and we're interested in having a dialogue, and we're also interested in examining things that you find interesting. So just reach out. I think we want to take this moment actually to say hello and thank you to our listeners in the UK and
the UK.
Yep, and in Australia.
Whoa, Australia. The other side of the world.
Yes, it's tomorrow there.
Wow. It's tomorrow there. If that's not a travel slogan, it really should be. Come to Australia. It's tomorrow there.
My friend Karen, who lives in Sydney, every once in a while I'll text her and just like, Karen, yesterday was really hard. Please tell me tomorrow's going to be good. And she's like, yeah, it's pretty good. I'm like halfway through tomorrow, and it's going just fine.
Well, that's nice of her to offer that for you.
That's a service I'm willing to offer to all of you. I'll check in if you're having a hard day. I'll check in with Karen for you.
Well, that's the kind of service we offer here at Rattlebox Games.
Reach out to us.
It's great.
If you want to reach out to us, once again, we're at Rattlebox Games on Twitter, and we're podcast at rattleboxgames.com for the email.
And if you'd like to see anything that we talked about today, we keep copious show notes on our blog at rattleboxgames.com.
Some of us do. Not me. Thanks. All right, guys. Thanks a lot. Hope you're staying warm. And
look forward with hope for the new year.
Yeah. I think 2017 is going to be our year.
You think?
It's going to be. Our, including the listener. Bye, guys.
Bye.
Brought to you by Rattlebox Games.
I'm Brendan Riley, the host of Install From Heap, a bi-weekly Netrunner podcast from Rattlebox Games about jank, deck building, and cyberpunk nonsense. If you know what that is, you'll love it, and if you don't, come on over and give it a try.